Steps, everyone. Today we are talking to Sarah Balda about how studio owners can make dance accessible and safe for everyone in every socioeconomic group. This is a great conversation to have today. And without further ado, we will introduce Sarah.
Yes, Sarah has a BFA with a minor in business administration and received her master's in nonprofit administration from the University of Notre Dame. She is now the chairwoman of the board, artistic director, dance educator of Dance Arts Center, which she converted from an LLC to a nonprofit in 2006 and went on to open a second location in 2007, both of which are thriving. She works to offer dance through the Boys and Girls Club throughout Florida. She's also the proud mom of 3 boys and one of the owners of Paula. So without further ado, we're excited to welcome Sarah Balda. Sarah, thank you so much for being here. We are so excited.
Thank you so much for having me. What an honor to be here. I'm super excited to have this conversation today and just get moving forward. And hopefully we can bring some clarity to some folks about dance accessibility, how we can attain that as a dance community, and as well as bring some clarity about nonprofit versus for-profit work.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot about nonprofits. We were talking before we went live that there's a lot of misconceptions about what does nonprofit mean, and you think you know, but there's also some connotations, some biases, right, that we have automatically when we hear the word nonprofit. And I'm really excited for you to be able to clear that up today for everybody. So, tell us why did you choose nonprofit administration? Why did you go that route?
We were limited in our community and specifically provide accessible dance to all. And it's always been in my heart to make dance accessible regardless of one's ability to pay. And I was running into some hurdles with the for-profit structure. So we converted to allowed us to open our doors to different type of funding sources, as well as support from our community in a different way. So that was the motivation for that. And then as far as going forward with my master's in nonprofits, that I had done so much research on my own and had done a lot of self-teaching and had also had a few great mentors, but really wanted to dive a little bit deeper and have a better understanding of the nonprofit sector and how I could enhance my work with Dance Arts Center.
Had you done a lot of nonprofit work prior to getting your master's? Is that kind of, did you have experience working with nonprofits?
I had a decent amount. I have sat on quite a few nonprofit boards, as well as just being overall involved in my community, even collegiate period, working with nonprofit groups, helping facilitate, community events and things like that. So it's always been a little bit kind of built into the structure of who I am. And going on to receive my master's was just sort of the next natural progression for me.
Yeah. I feel like, Melissa, when anytime I've ever encountered somebody that's done nonprofit work, like they're more willing and able to step into that like nonprofit role too, because they're not scared of it. People that have no idea, like they're like, I ain't touching that with a 10-foot pole. So like booster clubs and things like that, like it's like a whole nother world. So you always have to have that person that like isn't scared of it.
Yeah. Sure. So I mean, along the same lines of that fear that people have, just the fear of the unknown. Can you talk about the difference between nonprofit and for-profit and what that actually means? Like, do you actually have to sacrifice a quality program because you choose the nonprofit route versus the for-profit route, or can you reach for the stars and give everybody that they want from your program, even if you do choose a nonprofit structure?
Because being honest, right? Like we talked about this too. Like when you hear the term nonprofit, you're thinking, they don't have as much money. It's not as the quality is probably not up to par. Like, And honestly, I learned this from your situation that couldn't be further from the truth. You don't have to sacrifice quality to be a nonprofit, and it's so much more. So I can't wait to hear how you break this down.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really appreciate this question because it is something that I encounter quite frequently. Just a lot of overall misconceptions about what a nonprofit organization is, and then specifically in the dance, how does that play out, right? And are we providing some type of inferior product as a result of being a nonprofit? And I would like to start by saying that is absolutely a non-truth, right? So we do not need to sacrifice anything as far as the quality of and our program services. I would like to, if it's okay, talk a little bit about the difference between for-profit and nonprofit for those that are watching and listening that may not fully understand the differences. So there's a few different things that come into play. So when we think of a for-profit company, when you go out into the world, most are for-profit. They're either an LLC, an S Corp. There's various types of for-profit companies. And then there's nonprofit. And a lot of times it all boils down to, it starts with the mission, right? What is the mission? What is the intent of the business? And for a for-profit company, it's going to be so much about the profitability and selling product, right? And pushing that, selling the service, selling the product, and maximizing profitability. In the nonprofit sector, we're much more focused on the community, and that community can be very small and even global, right? But there's a community cause in mind, and that is the driving force. There's also different streams of revenue depending on the type of company that you are. For profit, you're typically pushing, selling some type of service or some type of product, whereas in the nonprofit sector, we're really not only, we can gather funds from program services, right? That's completely acceptable, but we're also finding different ways and avenues to money. So that can come through grants, through donations, different ways like that. And then there's also different things with management, as far as a for-profit company will be responsible to either the shareholders, or in a nonprofit, we have a board of directors that helps guide and facilitate our long-term mission, goals, strategies, and that sort of.
But nonprofit doesn't mean you don't get paid. It doesn't mean
not at all. Not
you
at all.
don't get a paycheck. Like, that's another, I think, misconception with nonprofit.
Yes. Right. 6% a nonprofit organization typically consists of a mix of paid staff members and volunteers. So I will say we rely heavily on our volunteers, and I am so blessed that we have so many and have come back for years to help. And the volunteers really help kind of keep the system rolling. But there is 100% nothing wrong. You should be paying your staff that are doing work, and they should be compensated correctly, level of education and their work output. So I
feel like what you're saying about volunteers is every dance studio, whether they're for profit or nonprofit, especially dance studios. There's so many volunteers that go into, recitals and helping at the studio and fundraisers and stuff like that. So, I mean, that really isn't, that's not a new thing, right? That happens whether you're for profit or nonprofit.
True.
So
yes.
Yeah, that's great.
And there are overlaps, right? There's 100% going to be overlaps. I think, especially in the dance world, we do rely heavily on volunteers. You volunteered at many of your own dance schools events and held car washes and did all sorts of various things to help raise money or to help support the business. But I will say, I think in the nonprofit sector, we utilize on a wider range, and just there's a wider reach for volunteer and volunteerism, and it's kind of definitely bred within the culture of what we do.
Right.
But it does intersect,
yeah,
with for-profit and non-for-profit. And as far as one last point I wanted to make as well. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, we had a little bit of a lag, I think. Melissa,
Oh,
what
no,
were you
go
going to
ahead.
say?
No, go ahead, please, Melissa.
Yeah, I definitely don't want to interrupt because we're going on the floor. My big thing that comes up for me is when you were talking about nonprofits having a community cause drive, being driven by community cause. That's a big responsibility, and you have to keep that in mind. Like people, I don't know. I would touch on the fact that I don't think people should think to pursue a nonprofit just because it's something that they thought about one night. Like you actually really do have to have a passion around what that community cause is, right?
And I will tell you, over the course of my career, I have sat down with so many people who wanted to, even outside of the dance world, wanted to start a nonprofit, right? Because they had an idea. And it's really important that if you do choose to go the nonprofit route, that it has to be something that speaks to you and speaks to your board, and has to be within the culture of what you're going to do, and by no means done because it is something that you feel you'll have some type of financial gain from, because there's a lot of also responsibility that comes with being a nonprofit. You have to be completely transparent. All of our financial documents are fully exposed, and should be, and we are responsible not only to our community as well, and they have strong oversight on what we're doing, how we're spending our money, and ensuring that we're staying true to being a nonprofit organization.
So what do you love? Give us one thing you love about the work, one thing you find most challenging about the work in this structure.
Well, I would say because I always like to start with the negative and end on a positive, so we'll start there. Probably the most challenging, and I think if you 100 nonprofits, 99 of them would be in agreement with me that it comes down to funding.
I was going to say it's got to be the raising money,
the funding,
right? It has to be
because we try to either provide services at a discounted to provide reach a larger scale with less resources, that can become very taxing. And then the seeking funding, so whether it be through grants or private donors or whatever it may be, does take a great deal of work and energy output, and it's a skill. Grant writing is not something that most people will sit down and it'll come naturally to. It's something you have to work on and hone that skill. Funding can be frustrating, especially the last few years were challenging for every single business. It didn't matter if you were for-profit or non-for-profit, it was challenging. But I feel that we were hit, especially hard, and trying to find additional funding, because a lot of the sources that would have been there to support us were also in question during a very challenging time. So that would probably be the most challenging aspect of my work. The part that I love the most is, well, the students, right? So that is 100%. But in the contract of what I'm doing with nonprofit work is really, when you see a student who may not have had, if it wasn't for a scholarship or an outreach class or whatever it may be, and you see that feedback. It may not even be verbal feedback. It's that physical feedback where they're standing more upright, they're making eye contact, and bless you with this just beautiful smile. That's where the joy is right there. So, and to be honest, there's been so many days that have been hard, right, over the last few years. And I always say when I walk into the studio doors or I walk into a dance class, wherever it may be, and I see those dancers and they look at me, okay, this is why I'm here. This is
Right.
this is what brings that love and that joy and that desire to continue moving forward, even during the hard days.
Yeah, and Sarah, that I mean, it really is a great segue into the next point because and we're going to talk about how you accomplish all this, right? But from your scholarship programs to the work you do to bring dance to lower income communities to the culture you're determined to provide through your studio experience, accessibility is something you really prioritize. So why that? Like what is the fire in you? Where does it come from to make that a priority? And talk a little bit about some of the examples for the difference that's made for some of your students.
Okay. Well, it's I think a lifelong journey for me personally. I come from two amazing, loving parents who have done provide the best for me. But growing up, it was hard to pay for dance classes, and I remember, bartering with the studio owner at the time to, can I clean, teach, what can I do? And she was amazing and let me do all those things, so I could take more dance classes. And over the course of my dance life, I've noticed there's just been this upward path of, everything's costing more.
Yeah.
And whether it's tuition, dance apparel, fees, and it is gotten to the point that it is not accessible for a lot of people. And really, I just became so passionate about it because I want anyone who I have access to who dance can, because dance has been such a part of my life, almost my whole life. And I know how much it's made me into the person I am today and what it taught me, not just as a dancer. I think in the dance world, we focus a lot on skills and talents, but there's so many other elements that come from being in a dance class that pay forward for the rest of your life, that I think if I can be part of adding that little piece of positive into someone, like we are winning, right? So that's really been the driving force for why we have focused so heavily on dance accessibility.
And thank you. I think that it's so beautiful because that's really the point in this world where everything has gotten so commercialized and everything is just overexposed on social media, and it's about the trophy sometimes, and that what convention and what competition and what place you came in and how expensive your costume and sparkly your costume is. Like you're really like you get it, and it really at the end of the day, this is what it's supposed to all be about. And I think just having reminders like this is good for anybody, whether you're a nonprofit or not, to remember why we're in this and what it actually does for people's lives for the rest of their lives. Right?
Absolutely. But that's not a for-profit, nonprofit intention, right? Like that's you. It is something we can all do, and we all have the power to do that as dance educators. And I think we just need to be mindful of that we're not just creating amazing dancers, future adults that we want to be amazing adults, right? And how can we impact that? How can we help them grow as a person, not just as a dancer?
Yeah, thank you so much. And for those of you just joining, I'm Bree. I'm here with my fabulous friend and co-host Melissa McDaniel Grisham. This is Beyond the Steps. Every week we're going to talk about topics that are impacting the dance community and beyond, performance athletes, like racism, gender inequity, sex abuse and prevention, nutrition, psychology, and of course, dance medicine and science. And we pick one question and we have one guest expert join us to really dive deeper and explore the question, right? Today, we're talking to Sarah Balda about how studio owners can make dance accessible and safe for every socioeconomic group. Dance should be accessible for all. And a lot of times that gets lost. We've talked so far today about, what is the difference between a nonprofit and a for-profit business, and some of those misconceptions that come with that, and the biggest rewards to doing this work. So Sarah, now I want to change to studio culture. You don't compete at your studio.
No.
Your recreational program is very heavily focused on training, and your studios really cater to all different types of students from all different socioeconomic backgrounds. Talk about your decision to not compete. What do you do for the students who want more? Because I think that's when I think about, I've built 3 different competitive programs at studios, and that's something that I was very heavily focused on in my studio career, and in management and directing and educating, right? But when I think about not doing that, I think about the kids that, even with the competitive program that I was running, there were always those ones that they want more, they want more, they want more. And you want to be able to provide that for them. How do you balance that? Because yes, like I think we all know a recreational program is the foundation of any studio, or it should be, right? That's where the training should happen at every level. And, at some studios that compete, that program feeds those competitive groups, right? So how do you balance the want for more with quality training with rec?
Okay, yeah, great question. So, we, as you stated, we're a non-competing dance program, and we do have a variety of students. Some of them want more, and some of them want to come one day a week for a 45-minute class, and
Right.
both are fabulous, right? And for us, what we have found is, in kind of the dance society, we've said we've got competitive, and that means you're serious, and then recreational, and that means you're there for fun. And really, there's all these kids in the middle, right? There's a ton of kids in the middle that want more than just to come one time a week, but don't want to dive into the competition circuit for a variety of reasons. Maybe it doesn't speak to them, the style of dance doesn't speak to them, maybe it's financial, right? Because
Right.
we all know
So expensive.
competing
Yeah.
is so expensive.
Yeah.
So, we really have our niche where we have these students who fall right in the middle of that. And we were able to help them achieve more access. So at Dance Arts Center, we have a dance company. So these are for our students that have been at the dance school for a while. They've showed not only talent, right, but more importantly, they've shown positive behavior with showing up on time. They have good intentions. They're respectful to their educator as well as their peers. And they're exhibiting those behaviors, then they're invited to come onto our company. And our company girls then perform at a variety. So even this evening, they're performing at an event to benefit the Boys and Girls Club. With 4 other dance schools from the area. And then next week they're performing down in south of us at a children's shelter. And we do a lot based performances, as well as we drive a little bit. We're outside of Orlando, so we have done performances in Orlando. So we have plenty of opportunity to perform. And I think really that's what, when we talk about the more, I've noticed that it's about having some type of audience, right? That's what we all crave as dancers. And I've found that my students are able to still attain that and get the exposure to the performances, but not do it in a competitive way. And we've also opened the door to a lot more students who, because of that financial barrier, right?
Yeah.
And so, it's just the way we kind of have operated, and it's worked really well for us. And our particular dance families are very happy that we don't compete, right? But there's some that love to compete. And then I have, if that's something that someone feels super passionate about, then I think there's, so many great avenues even around here that in our local area.
I love that
for that.
because this really falls in. There's two things. I'm going a little off script, but you really know what you're offering. You're very confident in what you're offering and what your what your mission is with what you're selling at your studio, and that's you're keeping that very solid, which is great. And if this isn't for you, then there's another place you can go. Like, exactly who you are and what you're doing. So that's wonderful, A, for business, but B, I wonder if you're seeing like a lot of the, when you go in the dance teacher networks and all the groups and social media, you're seeing the constant theme. And Melissa, we've talked about this, is burnout, right? You see kids quitting dance at 14, 15 years old because there's not enough time for peer groups and school demands, and they're just losing it, right? So dance is kind of getting chucked to the wayside. And I wonder if you've maybe got the answer here, and we all need to be paying attention, because are you seeing that as much?
No, and we really don't. And of course, there are some students that segue off because they have multiple talents and they want to go pursue something else more heavily. But as a whole, we don't see that burnout. And I know we're going to probably touch a little bit on safety, kind of goes layered into the way we operate and the amount of hours our students are dancing. And it's not because we don't want them to dance all the time, but we also know that their physical bodies can only handle so much, and they're growing and developing, and trying to find that balance where they can still and be in their school's play. They can dance and play soccer. They can do other things, because I know I've seen it over the years, students who become too hyper focused on one area can tend to balanced, right? So I think being able to find that balance, that you are able to receive a quality education, you're able to perform, you're able to have all the things that you want, but within the framework that we do, which is not competing and focusing more on community performances.
Yeah, thank you. So I want to switch over to accessibility now, because what are some ways that you're making dance accessible for all through your studio programs? And that could be through, I know you mentioned scholarships, tuition. How do you handle your pricing, the cost of your costumes? Like, without giving away all your trade secrets, what are some ways that you're accomplishing that to be able to make this accessible for more people?
Right. So at Dance Arts Center, our tuition rates, we have a portion of students that are on scholarship, and then we have a portion of students that pay tuition. It is set at or below, typically below market for our area, especially when you are looking into the tiered system for classes. So if you add on classes, our overall price point is much lower. Because we're trying to encourage students to take, right? And allow them to, I should say, right? Because that was one thing growing up, you can take one class, right? Because that's what we can afford. If we can kind of break down that cost to take multiple classes, you're making it already right there more accessible. Manage it through our tuition. We manage it through our scholarship program. We all of our fees and pricing, even when it comes to costuming and stuff. I mean, we have to, like this year, we did have a slight increase in our our costume fees, because the market has gone up.
I mean,
right?
everything's gone up, right? If
Everything's
you
gone
didn't
up.
increase your prices this year, I want to talk to you because I don't know how you managed it.
Right. So, everything's gone up for us,
Yeah.
right? But the tuition or the costume fee went up because our prices have gone up. And I will tell you, we didn't increase it the same increase that the costume market has gone up, but we needed to be able to kind of create a little buffer there. So we do that. Another program that we run for accessibility is we have a program called Stage Left, where we actually collect dancewear, and twice a year we lay everything out. It's all well organized, and you can come, and if you donated something, you can get something for free. If you didn't have something to donate, you can grab an item for $5. So
that's wonderful.
That's so incredible. It's something that's worked out really well. Our families love it, and they may not be able to come and get top to bottom all the items that they need, but let's say they're able to get one leotard or a trade their ballet shoes for another pair of ballet shoes. Then it just helps it bring another one of those barriers in our community that come along with being a dancer, sort of breaks that down. And then also, if I have families that I know specifically need something, that are on scholarship or even just going through a rough financial patch and they need something, we're able to kind of fill that void for them, which is great. And then wonderful. We also, it's been a little bit on pause, but we're working on revamping it. We have a program called Bavard Dances, and that program is specifically targeted to working with youth-based programs throughout our community, where we're bringing dance into youth-based programs are located. So we tried for a while offering scholarships, but transportation really became a big hurdle that we were noticing. Yeah. So, and it wasn't a lack of intention or desire, but actually getting the child from their home hurdle. So we found bringing dance to them has been much more successful. So it's been, it's a kind of a accessibility on multiple layers is something that we focus on, and it's for our community as a whole, right? Because we want everyone to be accessible and to have the opportunity. So
yeah, and I feel like really that's the only way accessibility, making something accessible, really can happen is if you have all those layers, because there's so many challenges for all different kinds of people, and you're really getting creative on how to address and tackle each one of those challenges, which I applaud. I think what you're doing is amazing with your studio. You know that, I've always said that, but yeah, that's really cool.
Thank you. That's
absolutely amazing. I mean, I think a lot of
my life's passion.
Yeah.
A lot of the things that you mentioned don't necessarily fall into the nonprofit space either. Like a lot of for-profit studios can establish a lot of these practices. It doesn't have to just be when you're established as a nonprofit or with a nonprofit structure. So keep that in mind as we get out there. We'll see what Sarah has later. So make sure you keep that in mind. For those of you who are just joining us, we're talking to Sarah Balda about how we can make dance accessible and safe for all socioeconomic groups. If you are just now listening, this is an amazing conversation that can apply if you are a for-profit studio or a nonprofit studio.
Or even not a studio. You could be another activity, right? You could be a performance athlete. You could be a yoga studio. You don't need to be a dance studio.
Right. Yes. That is very true. It doesn't necessarily have to be a dance studio. Anywhere where you're working with people who may or may not need support, these will be great things to establish in your space or in your area. I want to safety for a little bit. Safety is so very important in any environment, particularly when you're working with children, when you're working with performance artists. It's so important. And over the past 5 years, it's been a really, really hot topic. So talk about how you promote safety at your studio while still maintaining that structure of income and revenue and promoting accessibility and equity. Okay. And we can talk about, let me layer it down. What about dress code? Well, you kind of talked about dress code. That exchange program probably helps there, right?
That definitely helps. So really encourage our students to participate in that, and just to support each other. I mean, even our students are like, hey, these shoes don't fit me anymore. You want these? Or, it's almost just built within our culture to kind of support one another. And that right there, it takes down one more barrier. So through our dress code for sure. As far as safety goes, with the dress code in particular, we are also probably tend to be more on what some would say is a modest, but we wear full leotards and tights and traditional dancewear, I guess is what you would say. And that's something that we personally just, as an organization, promote to make sure we're not sexualizing children away. And again, every dance book that has worked out well for us, and really prioritizing the way that our students dress and appear in class. And along with that, kind of going back to what we said earlier, promoting a strict dress code allows our students to learn responsibility and structure and things that will then go on to continue help them in their future life to be successful humans. Because we're building not just dancers, but responsible future citizens.
And I think you have a Paula socks on your dress code too, don't you?
We do.
You do.
So, yes.
And I'm saying that's not a shameless promotion. There's a point.
No, absolutely. And it's definitely a big piece of what we promote, and it is one safety issue.
Yeah.
And, I personally feel a lot of the traditional dance shoes don't care for the feet in a way of shock absorption and support for the arch and the ankle. And they've great success. We've been using Apollo shocks on our dress code for, I believe, like 4 years.
10 years. Yeah, it's been
something
years.
like that. And my students love them. I love them. My teachers love them. I personally don't want to teach without them if I teach for more than 30 minutes. So
they're really good for teachers. But the reason I brought that up is because it's another one of those things that you assume Apollo, a premium footwear, right? They're not cheap. They're pricey. They're premium. They're worth it. They do what we say they do. But you're saying, okay, I'm a nonprofit and we don't have competition, but this is still important. This is important that you're safe. This is important that we're doing things correctly, and you're really emphasizing quality. And I think, again, going back to those misconceptions from earlier, you don't always associate that with nonprofit. So again, this is a great example of how the focus can be on both, right?
And when I've had parents, question me on why are we wearing, why is my child wearing these, and I explain it to them, then the light bulb, and I tell them how it actually reduces the risk of injury and give examples, then without a doubt they believe. It's just so they have been a true help for our dancers in keeping their bodies physically safe, which is
thank you. And thank you always for your support. But now to segue that into your facilities now, like your buildings and how is everything structured, your flooring, all of those things.
Yeah. So when
from
the beginning, I've been what's that?
It's not cheap.
I said that's not cheap. Marley floors, spring floors, not cheap.
It is not cheap. And it is something I've been passionate about since I started off, because I grew up on a very well sprung floor.
Yeah.
And understood the value of it. And then over the course of the years, dancing on different surfaces and realizing, oh, wait, why do my knees hurt after I dance at X place, but not after Y place? Well, when you look at the type of flooring, that's a huge component. And I do feel studio owners, that's one of the first places they cut corners. And that's a very financially motivated decision and a very short-sighted decision in my personal belief, because that's not looking out for your dancers' long-term health. And it's our responsibility. These parents are entrusting us with their children, and we need to ensure that we're doing what we can to protect them. So at Dance Art Center, we've invested heavily into our flooring, have had them professionally laid. They're beautiful wood floors that are sprung. They have, there's cork, and then bouncers or spacers rather, and then more cork and plywood, and then it's a multi-layered, and it has without a doubt proven to be an investment that is. And I, you know, always telling my dancers, you know, when we're dancing, I'm like, even when we're jumping, right, your knees over your toes, right, and you're not going to injure yourself here. This is not. If you go home and you trip, that's but here we do, and that all starts from the ground and then works itself up. So and then also, as far as safety within the studio, I do have security systems throughout both our locations, inside and out, and that is a multi-layered reason for that. One, for the safety of our dancers. So if we have something questionable going on, we can identify it quickly and manage through that. But also for accountability for our families, if maybe there has been situations in the past where something transpired in the classroom and there's nothing like video evidence to you know, kind of bring clarity to what actually took place.
I love that. That's how you chose to say that, to bring clarity too. Yeah.
And I truly all studio owners to invest in a quality video system that runs throughout their schools so that they can do that. And even down to, and this is a bit controversial, facilities and safety, but we don't personally have an observation window at our studio. I feel controversial, so I'm not trying to put anyone's toes here. But one thing that I feel pretty strongly about is not having an observation window for a variety of reasons. But one of them is for the safety of the children inside. Lobbies up. You know, not all parents know each child in the room, and that I feel it's important to let the children have their time away without being observed by unknown adults. So to decrease drama and conversation in the lobby about what's going on inside.
I mean, okay, so I'm just gonna ask. I know that there are parents that do not like that you do not have an observation window. So how do you address that? And do they end up have you ever had people leave because you don't? Because I have found this is like a deal breaker.
It is a hot topic. For sure. No, absolutely. So it is something that has been, we definitely have encountered issues in the past where families have come in and they've noticed we don't have an observation window, and that's a deal breaker for them.
Okay.
Just like in the past when I said, you know, competition isn't for everybody. If you are requiring an observation window, then we're not the right place for you. And here's a list of other dance schools in the area that do have them, and I encourage you to go there. No hard feelings, right? But the way I approach it is I share with them my concerns about safety. I share my concerns about drama. And also from my observations over the years, you know, prior to running my own dance schools, I taught students thrive, especially once they get into their teen years, if they aren't being monitored by their parent. And they want that time away. They and this is no disrespect to the parents, it is that separation is healthy. That's something I just feel very passionate about. And my dance educator growing up never had an observation window. And I think it just kind of was within my upbringing, and now it's just carried forward. And I've had to tell me thank you. And we also have students, that come in that they have been living in a homeless shelter, an abuse shelter, and they're there on scholarship. Those children do not need to be exposed, right? There's just a lot of opportunity there for that the children don't need. But with that being said, some dance schools love them, and they should. That's on them. That's what,
it's about what works for everybody. We're not here to say something's right or wrong, but you do you embody, clearly who you are and what you offer, and you're comfortable in that, you're confident in that. And in every aspect of your studio culture, I just appreciate that you are committed to, this is who we are. So, and you do that confidently in every direction. So I think there's a bigger lesson here in business, right? About how people need to take notice. But as a parent myself, going back to the independence thing, it's getting scarier and scarier as my son is getting into that double digit. We have a son that's about to be 10, and, I'm just terrified of what's coming, right? And to have a place where kids can find their independence in such a safe setting, I would imagine would be so reassuring for parents to experience. Like, if your kid's going to, experiment with independence, like, you wouldn't want it. This is the perfect situation.
It is. And it's, I know this is a common theme, but we are a dance family, but it's a nurturing, loving, supportive place where, I'm going on a little tangent here, but I had a student come in on Wednesday crying, right? Just tears flowing down her face. And I wasn't sure what was the cause. And I quickly identified it was a school-related issue. And okay, well, we're here now. We're going to walk through those doors. We're going to walk into the studio, and we're going to leave that problem out here. And we're going to go have some dance therapy. Let's go dance. And student walks in, face is red, she's upset, smiling, energy, and then eventually laughing and having a great time. And I think that's the ticket, man. That
I need some of that in my life. I don't have that anymore, so I'm gonna fly down to Florida on a weekly basis and come to your studio.
Come on down. I'll give you a little pep talk, and I'll just be like, "Come on, Bree, let's go dance it out."
All my problems will be gone, and I will be happy. That's the answer. And Sarah, you are the answer today.
Right, just like that.
Yep, to all the things.
Just like that. Well, I think we can move on to homework, because it sounds like Sarah probably has a good amount of homework to give our listeners. So Sarah, here at Beyond the Steps, we like to give our listeners and viewers one thing that they can do between now and the next show next Friday to make progress in this area. So how can they make dance more accessible and safe for all socioeconomic groups? One small step.
I think one small step is identifying within your dance culture what is one of the biggest hurdles your families have, and come up with one idea. You don't even come up with one idea on how you can make that just a titch easier to make your dance school more accessible to all. I think we're not going to solve problems overnight, right? It's building those blocks. So if you can build that first block, making dance more accessible within the construct of your studio, then that's the first step. And then take that block and build another one, and then build another one, and eventually, you'll be flourishing and having great joy, because you'll be finding dance accessibility is something that can be real and achievable.
That is awesome. So you've got your homework, everyone. Think of that one idea that can make dance more accessible for your families. What's going to help them the most in your studio space? Bree and I also have homework for you. Take the Steps initiative. There is a racism and equity section in there. There's a sex abuse and prevention section in there. There are a number of gender equity. There are training modules in there that can help you in so many different ways, and it is absolutely totally free. So make sure you head to the Apollo website, find that initiative, and take it. It is totally free. And how can people get in touch with you, Sarah?
I can be reached through Facebook, Instagram, email. I'm not going to lie, I'm not the most techie individual, but the best way to reach me is actually by email. It's my name, so Sarah, Sarah, at danceac.org. And that's going to be the best way to reach me. And if anybody has any questions or wants to bounce an idea off, I'm chat either by email or eventually phone and help anyone out that's interested.
And if you're in the Florida area, definitely look up Dance Arts Center. They're doing great things. You could hear it just from this small conversation today. There's a lot of good stuff happening there. So that's Dance Arts Center in Florida, and they have 2 locations. So check those out. We are going to be back next week. Sarah Balda, thank you so much for being here. This is your first time on the show. I feel like we could have had like multiple 1-hour conversations here about all of this. And I'm sure we really look forward to having you back, but thank you for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you for inviting me. This has been fun.
Of course. And Melissa, always a pleasure to see you, my friend. We're going to be back next week with another fantastic episode of Beyond the Steps. The time is changing. It is now going to be released at Fridays at 3:30 p.m. Eastern. So look for those episodes to still come out on Friday. Friday's still the day, just a different time, 3:30 p.m. Eastern. Watch for Beyond the Steps. If you have topics you want to hear about, you can message us on any of the platforms. If you are somebody that wants to appear as a guest because you have something you want to discuss, message us, info@apolloperformance.com or Apollo Performance on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all the things, right? We would love to hear from you. And we are turning this into a podcast because we don't have enough going on. We're going to make Beyond the Steps a podcast with quarterly content. It's coming. This year is the year. So stay tuned for that. We're going to release seasons 1, 2, and 3. And you'll get all those episodes as well. So we have lots going on, lots of exciting things coming for you. You have homework. And until next week, we hope you continue your journey beyond the steps. Everybody have a wonderful weekend. Bye, all.
Bye.